Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. Bugsy Malone is over there being stubborn. She's refusing to leave the field. She thinks that the ball will be thrown for her, and it might be once I get this video done. I hope you're all happy and healthy, doing the things you love with the people that you love doing them with. Please do me a favour, guys. Smash the like button for me on the video if you enjoy the content. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And even if you have, double check you still are. YouTube shenanigans, they are afoot. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's topics. And guys, look, this is a bit of a 2 + 2 = 4, we think, sort of story. It's a little bit of an op-ed, but we're going to base it off of some news that is out regarding Djurgården. And also I want to kind of drip in some ideas that I'm now working with in my head, which is always a dangerous thing. Regarding Brazilian football, the Serie A in Brazil, on the Sean Butler TV channel, link in the description, and I'll put it in the title as well. I'd love it if you haven't already, if you could go over there and hit that subscribe. If you're interested in the football finance, the business of football, then a lot of the content I'm going to be putting out on that channel is more relevant to that stuff and not so much specific about Tottenham. But in any event, I'm working on a video right now for that channel, which should be up in the next couple of days, that examines the resurgence, the kind of the re-life that has been given into Brazilian football since a law change in 2021 that allows for foreign investment, and it takes away from non-profit football to privatized football clubs. And consequently, 7 of the 20 clubs in the Serie A in Brazil are now owned by American investors or foreign investors, people like 777 Partners, people like John Textor, who owns Eagle Holdings, who own Crystal Palace and Lyonnais, and Molenbeek in Belgium. They're all moving in over there, and it's creating a tidal change, like a paradigm shift in the way that Brazilian football is represented and the opportunities that it has, and also the ability to create and make money from one of the last bastions of untapped gold mines in global football geographies. So I'm doing a video about that, but it all kind of merges in back to Tottenham Hotspur with the story about Djurgården that came out yesterday. Djurgården, as you know, the Swedish club, Tottenham recently struck an accord with them, did a bit of business in relation to the young 18-year-old Lucas Bergvall, who's supposed to be the next Frankie de Jong or the next whoever, insert superstar generational talent there. And so the owner, or the team manager, I think it's the management of the company, I think his name is Bossman, I think, but I could be wrong. I'll correct myself in the captions if need be. He has come out and said that Tottenham and Djurgården are looking to strike some meaningful relationship agreements that at the end of the season, that there's conversations on both sides, and that there's lots of kind of synergies and byproduct benefits that can suit and help both teams in their own journeys. And it would start informally with some sort of friendly, either they come to us or we go to them at the end of the season, or the end of next season or the year after. And the conversations are set to happen and to take place this summer at the end of the season for Tottenham, which will be interesting. The article goes on to kind of discuss what are the potential outcomes of any kind of more formalised arrangement. And obviously it can just be seen as potentially a feeder club for Tottenham, but also a place for Tottenham's youngsters to go and get some overseas experience playing at professional levels if they're trying to bridge the gap between the under-21s and the first team. Sometimes if you're loaning players out to teams in the Championship or League One, it's very difficult to find clubs that suit your footballing philosophy, and that's the benefit sometimes of having feeder clubs, or especially if they are more formalised in multi-club ownership rules, such as what the City Group do. They try to encourage each of their teams to be able to play to a certain system, to play to a certain style, if possible, where possible. And then you have the ability of kind of spreading your wings with your knowledge base. You can find the best talent not only in the playing style, the playing staff around the world by having these relationships, but you can also find and have new learning techniques that emerge from certain areas of the world. So maybe Tottenham are looking to kind of finally move into that sort of area of the game. It's the last untapped revenue source, if you like, but also growth opportunity for Tottenham. We've done the infrastructure, we've done the training ground, we've done the stadium. We're 70% of the way through the gentrification of Tottenham. We've got concerts, we've got Formula One, we've kind of got as much or as probably the majority of the blood from the stone, or the juice from the squeeze that is possible, and the last untapped kind of area for Tottenham to then move into. And I've been talking about this for a long time, and I think it's about to start to become reality, is the movement into a multi-club ownership. And when I say move into a multi-club ownership, I actually mean a move back into, because don't forget, ENIC have historical form in this area. They were one of the teams, or one of the investment companies that broke ground into the idea of multi-club ownership way back in the 90s, when when ENIC owned and had stakes in Rangers, in AEK Athens, in Basel, in Slavia Prague, and in Vicenza, I think it was the other one. And obviously the rules with regards conflicts of interest in multi-club ownership changed in UEFA when two of ENIC's own clubs both qualified for Europe and in the same competition, and would have played each other at the same time. As I've said a few times on this channel, the rules have subsequently loosened to the point where, to the largest extent, they're almost, unsubstantiated anymore. When you look at certain scenarios, with the best example that I always use is Benjamin Sesko at Salzburg, who went to Leipzig for half the fee that was offered by Manchester United last summer, or the summer before, whenever the transfer took place. And so there's clearly Chinese walls that are irrelevant in those kind of relationships, and there shouldn't be. You're supposed to always do what's in best interest of both, or of the club that you own. And as much as you can pretend or promote this idea that you have vastly different ownership structures and management level, and there's no, never the two shall meet, in reality those things don't really happen. And so, as I say, Tottenham Hotspur have got form in this regard, but are we going to move back into it? The rules changed, the sales, the divestiture was forced, but now the rules have opened up again. Are Tottenham going to look to get back into bed with that sort of thing? And if so, then who is the best person to utilise a certain skill set in order to achieve those ends? Enter Scott Munn. I have been saying for a long time, I don't know what Scott Munn's directive is at Tottenham. There was arguments that he was being brought in to look after the women's football and have an overarching kind of vision or plan. But in reality, what Scott Munn's known for is being the head of City Football Group Asia. If anybody knows how to add value in a particular vision for Tottenham Hotspur that includes multi-club ownership, then it's going to be him. The fact that we still have Fabio Paratici, the fact that we now have Johan Lange and Rob McKenzie, all of these additional sources of value that are directly relating to negotiations and identification for talent for the first team, for the women's team, for the youth team, suggests that Scott Munn is largely irrelevant in that particular area of the bigger picture at Tottenham. It was only 12 months ago that we didn't have Scott Munn, we didn't have Rob McKenzie, we didn't have Johan Lange, we had a Fabio Paratici who was distracted, and we'd already begun the process of fine-tuning and optimising our youth team. We'd already started to make better decisions with our first team acquisitions of talent. And so, with his legal issues coming into play, maybe there was a need for another director of football, and Johan Lange was the eventual selection there. He has then brought in more and more faces and more heads to kind of add value. But is Scott Munn really necessary, especially when you have an owner who, claims that he was stepping back, or likes the thought of stepping back a bit from the Tottenham side of the business and thinking and focusing on other priorities, whether that's the NFL franchise that might be coming to London, whether that's the gentrification of the property group around Tottenham, who knows? But in reality, most of the time, when it comes to the nitty-gritty of the negotiation, Daniel Levy is still very much involved. And so it brings me back to the question of what purpose was there in bringing Scott Munn into Tottenham if it wasn't to utilise the skill set that he has honed whilst in the City Football Group? And of course, multi-club ownership was the obvious answer. So this particular conversation with Jurgarden, look, it might be informal, it might just be conversations at this point, and these things take time because there's lots of pros and cons to the idea of getting into bed with other football clubs. You have to be sensitive to the branding of and the loyalty of the fans of the club that would ultimately come in and play second fiddle in the long run. You have to figure out whether or not there is enough value in what that other club already brings so that you can get some sort of return on investment from the investment if you are to make it eventually. These things usually start as informal feeder club relationships, and if there is benefits, if the juice was worth the squeeze, then they will become more formalized. At the same time, guys, I do believe, and I'm going to save the most of the juice for the video that I'll be putting out on the Sean Butler TV about Brazilian Serie A, but I do believe there is a massive opportunity, and it's only going to be short-lived, because in the last 2 years, 7 of the 20 teams in Brazil have already had investments from multi-club ownership groups. 777 partners, who now own Everton, also have an ownership in Brazil with Vasco da Gama. So I think the Eagle Holdings has an invested relationship with Botafogo. 777 Partners is in bed with Vasco da Gama. There's Club de Bahia, which is involved with another multi-club. The City Football Group are involved with there, or maybe the City Football Group are with Vasco da Gama. I forget. The detail will be in the other video. Check it out. But ultimately, guys, I think that Tottenham have maybe a short lifespan here to be able to get in there, and obviously the value in getting involved in Brazil is probably significantly higher than it is in getting involved in a feeder club in Sweden. Not to be disrespectful to Sweden, but we know that some of the greatest talents that emerge in world football come from South America. And Tottenham, for a while, had a scout that was based out in South America, in Argentina, I think it was, but he leaked information about a goalkeeper that we were scouting and ended up losing his job. And so Tottenham don't really have, as far as I'm aware, a physical presence that extends beyond maybe a local scout that is just sitting there going and visiting around the grounds. But to me, having a relationship with one of these clubs in Brazil, it will allow Tottenham to have a footprint in the area, be able to garner and harvest some of the best young talents, give you first dibs, especially with the relaxing of the laws around Brexit, around UK immigration from South America, which has made it, until now, very difficult for teams like Tottenham or teams in the Premier League to actually go and sign young 16, 17, 18 year olds from South America. They usually have to come in via Spain or Portugal, where those kind of naturalization laws were a little bit looser. That's no longer the case because of the Brexit laws. One of the few benefits, without getting political, of Brexit that's emerged so far is the ability for teams like Tottenham to potentially get into bed with that sort of idea. And consequently, there's plenty of value, and the situation with some of those clubs that haven't yet been invested in Brazil is that they have lots of debt. But they have massive untapped revenue streams, and once there is a majority ownership in that league of teams that have that kind of Americanized capitalist kind of vision around privatization of football clubs, then they're going to go and start to renegotiate media rights deals, which can, in and of itself, generate far more value, far more money for those clubs, making them less of a cost center and more of a cash cow, which ultimately can come back in a multitude of ways and benefit ENIC, which can ultimately benefit Tottenham Hotspur. It's a fascinating update. For me, I think it's intriguing beyond belief, and I think that Scott Munn is here. As I've said 1,000 times, I think that Scott Munn is here ultimately to use his skill set to get Tottenham into that world, and I'm all for it. I think it would be a brilliant update to Tottenham Hotspur's future. Morning, guys. And I think that if we can get it, the value speaks for itself in terms of access to those sorts of markets, access to the talent pools, access to the learnings of how to coach, how to develop players, and of course, maybe bilateral movement of trade, sending players back the other way as well, if there's any desire to do that. And I think it will be something that we should start with the Swedish club, and over the next 5 years start to add in more and more, because it's clearly the direction of travel. The most successful teams now are the ones that get on board multi-club ownerships, but unfortunately, as I will be saying on a different video that explains the history of MCOs, the most difficult stage of moving into a multi-club ownership is when you add your first additional club to the portfolio. That is where most of them fail, because that's where the highest risk and the lowest return exist. Once you get through that hurdle and you start to add 3 and 4 and 5, the learnings of the first and the second can be applied to the third, the fourth and the fifth, and the benefits massively outweigh the risks. And that's why Manchester City, well, it's in no small part why Manchester City are such an unbelievably well-run football club now, is because they have a template that they can apply to each additional club that they buy. They're at 15 right now. They'll probably end up with 20, 25, one club in every major league in the world. Tottenham need to get on board this boat for all the things that Daniel Levy has done fantastically well with regards infrastructure and the financial side of football. The fact that he was early on the multi-club ownership thing, but has subsequently left it now until it's very late in the day. Time is ticking, Daniel. I really think you need to start to make a move onto some of these kind of feeder club relationships that then can become more formalised. And look, as a Tottenham fan, it will be fantastic to be able to support Djurgården Hotspur or Corinthians Hotspur or whatever. You know, I'm joking with the naming problem here, but there's lots of considerations, both the pros and the cons. But ultimately, for me, I think that Tottenham need to do it, and I hope that this Djurgården news is a stepping stone towards the first principality in this regard. And I am excited. Let me know if you are. Like, subscribe, and comment, guys. Check out Sean Butler TV. Also, if you want to see this via podcast format, you can, in the description, you can also find the Spotify links. I'll be putting it out to all the other podcasts as well once I get syndicated in that regard. Follow me on TikTok, SpursTalkShow 1, I think it is, because somebody else already copied my name. But anyway, that's for a different story. All the socials are in the description. Make sure you follow me everywhere, guys. Like, subscribe, and comment. And as always, bye-bye.